Hello. So I think after a long break, we are moving towards the Java, the Java language, which is a very important language nowadays, which is used for many applications like TV remote control, all the different applications regarding the many electronic components can be handled with the Java, and the mobile, which is the best example, which can be handled with the Java programming language. Let us start with the number of things. I think we have been studied many things about the Java introduction, the history, the features, as well as the data types, operators. Let us now turn to the decision making. We know that the decision making statements, again, the Java included the number of statements like if, else if, nested if statement, and switch statement. Again, these all statements are very similar with C language. So that Java and C is very similar, but Java is a purely object-oriented language, and C is only procedure-oriented language. We know that the decision making in C with the considered the statement if, very simple example, simple if statement. We know that if we take the decision while programming, we need to take the decision whether in which way we have to move to the next statements and control flows from one statement to another statement. We have to give the if statement. Many times the if statement is used with the number of corresponding statements like else or nested if else, or even the ladder of if else. The if statement mostly used for the decision making, where the decisions will be taken for our day-to-day routine, where the from which path, from which branch we have to move to the next controls of the statements, or otherwise in our day-to-day happening also. So that is the if statement. So first is a if statement. An if statement consists of a Boolean expression followed by one or more statements. So if we are using the if statement, it consists of Boolean expression, and it may have one or more statements. So very simple if, which is not having any else statement. If that condition will be true, written in the if statement, if that condition will be true, then the particular group of statement or one statement or more statements, multiple statements can be handled or can be executed when if statement is provided in our program. After the if statement, if that statement is not true, that is false, then if statement will be escaped, or it will be skipped, and the next statements written after the if statement will be get executed. Second thing is that if and else statement. Now we know that if statement, simple if statement does not have any else statement, but normally the if statement will have two parts, that is one part is a true part and other part is the false part. So if else statement gives this this statement if else, which is followed by an optional else statement. So this will executes when the Boolean expression is false. So if statement has two things, that one part is a true part and another part is false part. So we have to, inside the if statement, if that Boolean expression is true, then and then true block of statements will get executed. Otherwise, the false block of statements will get executed. So that is the if else statement, which is having two parts. That is, one part is before else and other part is after else. The else is very important, where we can use the else statement. If that expression is false, the part which is written inside the else statement will get executed. Another statement, decision making statement, is a nested if statement. Now we know that nested if, that is, nest is a particularly considered and concerned with the nest of any sparrow. So where it is nested, a simple her home, and it will be get executed. If we are using a number of if, we can use that if, or those if can be given in the else part of that if. So inside another if, we can use the else if. So from the first statement of if, we have to go inside the number of if we can give inside the if, or otherwise we can give the else if in the else part of our nested if. So this is also very important. Whenever we necessary to write this nested if, the programmer can give the nested if statement where the outer if is a particularly statement where number of if statement or number of else if statements can be inserted inside the nested if statement. The another next statement is a switch statement. We know that we have already seen these all statements in C language, but switch statement, we know that if the nested if statement and number of if statements will be increasing, the complexity of the program will get increased, so that we have to transfer, we have to get the switch statement, which is very simple for easiness of that particular program. So that a switch statement which allows a variable to be tested for quality against a list of values. So we have to provide the list of values in switch statement, and the switch statement will get executed first, and then the particularly value in the switch statement will be tested with the equality against all this list of values. So that is the switch statement. All of these statements are particularly a decision making statements. So this is the first if statement, use of if statement to specify a block of Java code to be executed for, and if a condition is true. Here it is written that the syntax if and the condition, which is the Boolean expression. If, and inside the curly bracket, the block of code to be executed if the condition is true. So if this condition will be get true, the block of code or block of statements, one or multiple statements written inside this curly bracket will get executed when this if condition will be true. Otherwise, the next statement written after this curly bracket, the closing curly bracket, the particularly statements written after the if will get executed if this condition is get false. So this is the simple if statement which will specify the particular Java code which can be executed if that condition is only the true condition. This is the simple if. Now the next is the else statement, or you can say the two parts of any if. We have to use the else statement to specify a block of code to be executed if the condition is false. So if the condition will get false, the block of statements will get executed, and the statements written after the else will get executed. Now this is the syntax provided here. If again the Boolean expression, that is the condition, if we have to provide the condition here. For example, a is less than 5 or not, something we can provide here. So if statement is given, condition will be provided after if in the parenthesis, and these are the two parts. This is curly bracket of the true block statements. So block of the code to be executed if the condition is true. So this is a true block of statement get executed if the condition is true. Yes, Komal Patil. Okay. Put your mics off, all of students. Now, if the condition will get true, the block of code which is written inside the true block of statements will get executed. Now, if this condition is false, then else part will get executed. The else part will have the block of code to be executed if that condition, if that condition in the sense, the condition written after if will get false. So this, if this condition is false, then and then else part will get executed, and the source code or number of statements, one or more statements written inside the else part will get executed, and the if condition will get the particularly if that condition will have the both of these branch, that is true branch and false branch. So that is the else statement. The next statement is the else if statements. So again, this is the else if statement which is used for the nested if else. So use the else if statement to specify a new condition if the first condition is false. So for example, here we have written the syntax: if the condition 1 is true, if the condition 1 is true, block of code to be executed if the condition is true. So in this block, we can write one or multiple statements to be executed if this condition will get true. Otherwise, if this condition is false, then and then we have to move towards the else part. The else part will have another if. That is very important. Now, if this if is particularly a outer if, and this if next if is a inner if, so that we can call it as a nested if. So nested if may have the number of conditions. So first condition was seen above, and then another condition we have written here. If this condition is true, again the block of code to be executed if this condition 1 is false and condition 2 is true. So if this condition is false and another second condition will be true, then and then this particular block of code will get executed. Later on, again the condition 1 is false, we are moving towards the else. Another if is here, and we can again take the opportunity to see the condition 2 is true or false. So whatever the condition 2 is there, condition 2, if it is true, then in first block it will be get executed, and if this condition is also false, now the condition 1 is false and another if which is written after the else is also false, then and then the else part will get executed which is written after the else if. So else part will have the block of code to be executed if the condition 1 is false. So this condition is false. Which condition? First condition, that is the outer condition, will get false. Then another condition 2 will be also false. So all of these above condition will get false, then and then the last else part will get executed. So we can write this type of if and else if number of times, or number of times and number of uh, uh, etc. You can write these if inside one if. So outer if is particularly the condition used may be used for checking of the Boolean expression. Now, the first if condition may have another if. Now, this block of code is to be executed if the condition is true. Here you may have to write the if also. Not necessary that if you can write else after else you can write if. Maybe you can insert if condition in this block of code. So this is very important. Also, after the else, so this condition 1 is false, and after the else if this condition is true, so first condition is false, second condition is true, then and then block of code to be executed, this particular block of code will be executed, and that where the condition 1 is false and condition 2 is true. Also, you can write if in after this bracket also, after curly bracket. So you can insert number of ifs in one if also. And another thing is the last else will contain the block of code to be executed that all of the conditions above will get false. So that the last else will be an exceptional part where we can use the source code to be executed if all the conditions which are written above will be get false, and then this will be executed. So this is the else if statement. We can insert the number of if after the else or number of if after the if statement also. Next, we know that the decision making statements which are executed particularly by using the if and switch statement, but we can use the loop constructs also. So there are 3 loop constructs which are very similar with C language construct. We know that 3 loop constructs are there: while loop, for loop, and do while loop. Now, the first we shall turn to the first while loop. This will repeat all the statements or group of statements while a given condition is true. It tests the condition before executing the loop body. So very important that when we are writing the while loop, the condition will be tested before executing the body of the loop. But this will repeated this will repeated a statement or a group of statements, one or multiple statements, while the condition will be true. This is very important. If the condition will be true, then body of the loop will get executed. Now, again, the while loop will be used, which is called as a entry controlled loop. We have already seen this entry controlled loop and exit controlled loop in C language. In the first year, we have already seen these all entry controlled and exit controlled. When entry controlled loop will be executed, in that particular loop, the condition will be get tested at the first first side of the that particular loop, where the after the condition will be get true, then body of the loop will get executed. And then at the last, the while loop may contain the condition which will be get false, then we shall come out from that particular while loop. Okay. Again, the another loop, this which is called as a for loop. Now we know that the loop control will have the different 4 things. The 4 things which are considered, that first is the initialization of the variable, second the condition, third is the counter, and fourth is the body of the loop. So in the for loop also we are, in every loop also we are trying to write all these, particularly the 4 steps. The first step is initialization, second step is a particularly a condition, third is the body of the loop, and fourth is the counter, which can be executed up to the particularly repeated statements. How many times we can repeat those all statements which are written in the body of the loop will be written. So counter is used for that. So in the for loop we have to write these all different 4 different steps. We have to execute a sequence of statements multiple times and abbreviates the code that manages the loop variable. So this will execute a sequence of statements, maybe one statement or maybe multiple statements. So we have to execute these all statements multiple times, and it will abbreviate the code that will manage the loop variable. Okay, so that is the control statement or control counter variable. The next statement is a do while statement, which is the last statement. This can be used for looping statement and like a while statement, except that it tests the condition at the end of the body. So in the do while loop, we know that we have to check the condition at the end of our loop body. So the do while statement will not executed when will not executed the particular condition at the starting point. This will be used to check the condition at the end of the body of the loop. So uh, after of the after loop body, that is the number of statements which are written inside the do, will be executed at least once in the do while loop. So what is the example of this do while loop, where we can write this program when we are using the condition or particular statement like a password, username and password is the best example for do while loop, where we are directly using the username and password. If the password will be wrong, we can give the number of times the password. So after the 3 or 6 attempts, we can come out from that particular do while loop. So that at least once this particularly password and username can be used. So this is very important thing where do while loop is used. So number of statements written in the do statement, do statements. So those statements will be executed at least once. And the best example is password. Password, we can use statement of passwords at least once. Okay, so these are the loop controls. We have already seen these decision making and loop controls in C language. So those all different statements are very similar with C language statements. One of the control statements where we can use these control statements in our decision making and particularly loop statements. So first is a break statement, which will terminate the loop or switch statement and transfers execution to the statement immediately followed by the loop or switch. So we can use the break statement for breaking of these switch statements or loop statement. So this is also a control word which is used for breaking statement. Okay. The next is a particularly the continuous statement. So continuous statement, this will cause the loop to execute to skip the remainder of its body and immediately retest its condition prior to reiterating. So continuous statements, so for example, we have to skip some of the statements in the body of the loop, we can use the continuous statement. So these two statements are also important. Maybe these can be used and asked for the examination at the MCQ or a simple 5 marks short note question. Now this is another part which is called as a typecasting in Java language. So we know that in Java, when you assign a value of one data type into another data type, the two types may not be compatible with each other. If these data types are compatible, then Java will perform the conversion automatically. So known as automatic. So it is done fairly, but sometimes you may get errors. So typecasting is also known as type conversion in Java. So what is typecasting? It is some same sort of a type conversion. So what is typecasting? Typecasting is oftenly necessary when a method returns a data to method returns a data of type in a different form, then we need to perform an operation. So under the above certain circumstances, this typecasting can be carried out automatically. In other cases, it must be forced manually or explicitly. So for example, assigning an integer value to a long variable, for example, there is a syntax written here. The data type, we have to provide the data type and the variable name, a particular variable name we have to provide is equal to in which data type we are converting, that data type we have to specify here. Variable to be converted, which variable to be converted, we have to specify. The syntax for casting a type is to specify the target type in the parenthesis and followed by variable's name or the value to be cast. For example, the following statement. For example, you can see integer number. The float value is equal to 32.33. So this is converted. See here, the number is given in integer and the value is a floating point number. So 32.33 is a floating point value. This will be converted into integer value. So this is the data type. We are going to convert this value 32.33 in a particular number. Number is corresponding to integer value. So this is a conversion. This is also called as a typecasting. Now, just see the typecasting in Java is nothing but converting a primitive or interface or class in Java into other type. There is a rule in Java language that classes or interfaces which shares the same type hierarchy only can be typecasted. So we can typecast, we can convert primitive data types, interfaces, classes in Java, and we can all this typecasting can be done with the same type, same sort of a type we can cast it. So if there is no relationship between the Java, we'll throw class cast exception. So exception will be thrown by the programming. Typecasting has two types, which are implicit casting, that is widening, explicit casting, that is narrowing. So we have to widen the particularly type, or we can narrowing the particular type. So implicit casting is widening, explicit casting is narrowing. So this is very important. This is a conversion of data type, implicit and explicit typecasting or type conversion. See here, this is the implicit casting. The implicit casting type conversion can happen if both types are compatible and target type is larger than source type. See here, target type is larger than source type. So this is in our example, the byte can be converted to short, short can be converted to integer, integer can be converted to long, long can be converted to float, and float can be converted into double. So this will be done as a widening. So from byte is a very small a small quantity, and the double is a very large quantity. From the small to large, it is called as a widening, and this is called as a implicit typecasting. Then the next is a explicit casting. When you are assigning a larger data type to a smaller data type, then explicit casting is required. So for example, you can say here we have to cast this double into float, float into long, long into integer, or integer into short, and short into byte. So this is called as a narrowing. So we can convert double to directly short by explicit casting of any data type. So that is called as a narrowing. So we can convert any data type from one data type to another, the similar type of data. For example, double is a particularly a numeric quantity which can have the decimal point, and that can be converted into integer that will not having any decimal point. So this can be happened in Java. So that is called as a explicit casting. Okay, thank you very much, all of you. Thank you for attending this session. You can just give your attendance. I think there are 29 students which are online.